1993, Snoop Dogg released hip-hop's most anticipated album ever and became the first rapper to debut at #1 on Billboard, selling almost 1 million copies in its first week. Delve into the fascinating story behind his early life, exploring the real events that led to his signing to Death Row Records, including his first group with Nate Dogg and Warren G, the true story behind his first meeting with Dr. Dre, and how he almost signed to Ruthless Records. Snoop Dogg was born in 1971 as Calvin Cortazar Broadus, but as he often recalled, his mother never called him anything other than Snoopy his whole life. She gave him that nickname because he spent entire days watching the Snoopy cartoon, telling him he watched it so much he was starting to look like him. He grew up on the east side of Long Beach with an older and a younger brother who were instrumental in shaping him. His mother was a hard-working single parent in the mid-70s, juggling 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to keep her family alive in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the area. She even adopted their cousin after Snoop's uncle and his wife lost custody of him. His mother went through the entire process to bring him into the home and raise him as her own. On Saturday nights, she would play funk records in the house, giving them their musical roots. As a kid, Snoop played piano, sang in the church choir, and loved football and basketball. In school, he kept everyone laughing. He was a natural jokester inspired by Richard Pryor. During his childhood, his uncles would often send him and his cousin to do wild things for $1, like jumping fences with dogs chasing them to steal fruit. Uncle June Bug was probably one of them. With his little cousin Daz Dillinger, they once repainted their grandma's mother's walls with mud, earning an ass whooping they still remember to this day. Snoop's father later explained that he was rarely around in the early years. He and Snoop's mother grew up together in the small town of Macomb, Mississippi, before reconnecting in Los Angeles around the late 60s. After dating for a time, life in Vietnam separated them. He stayed connected through calls and letters until Snoop was about 12, when he began to be more present in his life. Since then, the two have developed a strong father and son bond that continues to this day. Snoop first crossed paths with Warren G on the way to elementary school. Warren was originally friends with Snoop's older brother Jerry, but the two bonded even more in their teens. As covered in the N.W.A. doc-series, Warren G is Dre's little stepbrother. His father married Dre's mother Verna in the early 80s, and Warren moved in, sleeping in Dre and Tyree's room. They showed him the neighborhood and became like his big brothers. Warren G witnessed Dre's early career, from the neighborhood DJ crew he formed with Easy to the moment he joined the Wreckin' Crew in late '82. Inspired by Dre, Warren asked him to teach him how to mix. Snoop and Warren's first hip-hop introduction was with the record Super Rhymes. It was the first song they learned bar for bar, and that is where Warren G got his flow. Snoop would later count Slick Rick and Ice Cube as 2 of his strongest musical inspirations. At the same time in junior high, as Snoop revealed in his off-air interview with Big Boy, he formed a rap group with Domino, a Long Beach rapper who became known in the late 80s. Domino wrote their lyrics, and they used them in school rap battles until one day they started losing one, so Snoop went off script and freestyled, discovering his now well-known talent. During those junior high battles, they also faced the Chill and MC8 from Compton's Most Wanted and became friends after that. By the mid-'80s, Snoop and Warren G were working for a man who sent neighborhood kids to sell candy in wealthy suburbs. They hustled for $20 a day. Warren remembered about 15 kids in the crew, including the Twins, who later became a known hip-hop duo affiliated with the DPGC. In the vans during the rides, they held freestyle battles and called themselves the Voltron Crew. Warren even used Dre's unreleased Wreckin' Crew rhymes to impress everyone. In the summer of '86, Snoop spent time with his dad, who had moved to Detroit. That is when he started working at McDonald's, earned the nickname Young Eggs after mastering the breakfast shift egg cracking, and played basketball with a Detroit school that even wanted him to stay and join their team, but he chose to go back to Cali. In September, on his first day at Poly High, Snoop ran into a kid who would later be known as Nate Dogg, a future close friend many would mistake for his cousin. They crossed paths in science class when Snoop tapped out a beat and started rapping, and Nate began singing beside him. At lunch, Snoop would freestyle while Nate sang hooks during battles. As Nate Dogg explained in this interview with Julio G, he didn't really know how to rap, singing was his thing. At first he sang gospel melodies he knew over Snoop's freestyles until he got caught and began writing his own lines. Nate Dogg was born in 1969, 2 years older than Snoop. He moved to Long Beach at 14 after his parents divorced and had grown up singing in church in Clarksdale, where his father pastored and his mother led the choir. Not long after meeting Snoop, he left high school and enlisted in the Marines, serving 3 years as an ammunition specialist and spending part of that time stationed in Japan. In In 1987, after Snoop's mother moved to another part of Long Beach, he changed high schools and landed in the same one as Warren G. They organized rap battles at school football rallies, and once Snoop beat everyone there, they ditched class to battle at other schools. His reputation grew as one of the best freestylers in town. Warren worked as his agent, setting up battles, finding opponents, and hyping him by pointing at random things for Snoop to rap about. That is how Snoop built his infamous style, where he could keep busting for hours. They even started calling Warren G. Woodstock, Snoopy's sidekick in the cartoon. It was around this time that they started laying down their early material. Warren had enough equipment to record and cut a few mixtapes in his bedroom. They started taking the beats of the hottest rap tracks of the moment and freestyle over them. That is when Snoop took the name Snoop Rockski, inspired by Kool Rock-Ski of the Fat Boys. Warren recalled mailing their demos by hand to every major rappers at the time, like Eric B. and Rakim. They formed a group called Three the Hard Way with their friend Big E. The name later became the title of the only 213 album almost 20 years later, likely a nod to their beginnings. As Sir Jinx recalled during his interview with West Coast Styles, they even took the bus to record one of their first mixtapes at his place around '87. For those who have not seen the N.W.A. docuseries, Sir Jinx is Dre's little cousin and Cube's childhood friend. He and Cube formed the Stereo Crew and CIA with KD before Cube left and joined Dre, Easy, and Arabian Prince to create N.W.A. around late '86. During his teens, Snoop sold candy, delivered newspapers, and bagged groceries to help his mother and two brothers. But when he saw a friend make $1,500 in one night while he earned minimum wage, he wanted in. After 2 nights, he made $600. There was no turning back. It was around these times that he naturally affiliated with the due to their heavy presence in the neighborhood. He and Warren started running the streets. They thought they had an almost perfect plan. Snoop lived right next to the spot, so whenever they heard police coming, they ran to the back, jumped a fence, and slipped through Snoop's apartment window that he always left open. But it was a hot spot. They had to watch out not just for the police, but also for rivals. Both remembered surviving multiple life-threatening situations during that period, with several close calls. By 17, in 1988, his mother kicked him out after their house got at. Snoop started couch surfing and living in his car for 2 months. Then he met a woman who became like an auntie to him. He moved in with her and helped care for her special needs child, building a real bond. That experience shaped the mentor side he later became known for, the same influence he brings to the Snoop Youth League today, which has now produced over 40 NFL players since it was founded in 2005. During the recording of Eazy-E's debut album, Dre came home for the holidays and stopped by his mother's place, where Warren and Snoop were hanging out. Snoop was nervous, afraid Warren would put him on the spot. Dre made them listen to the title track of the album, which he was working on. They were blown away. And then the moment Snoop feared arrived. When the song ended, Warren jumped in, hyping up his friend, saying that Snoop knew how to rap. But Dre had heard that line 1,000 times, and he was not trying to deal with more rap requests while he was on holiday, especially coming from his younger brother and his homie, who were about 7 years younger. When it was time to eat, the conversation moved on. During his senior year, Snoop returned to Poly High School and graduated. That's where he crossed paths with a young Cameron Diaz and became her pharmacist, but most and foremost, where he met his future wife, Shantae. They started dating, and as Snoop always recalls, he wrote her love letters for 4 months before their first kiss. They went to prom together and stayed together ever since, recently celebrating 28 years of marriage and raising a family of 3 children. Around this time, Nate Dogg returned from the army and reconnected with Snoop, who introduced him to Warren and told him Nate could sing. At first, Nate and Warren did not really get along, but once the three started recording together, their chemistry became undeniable. Inspired by Richie Rich's group 415 from the Bay Area, they began calling themselves 213, the area code for Southern California that covered zones like Compton, Long Beach, and Watts. Warren handled the turntables, Snoop rapped, and Nate sang the hooks. They started doing little gigs, and they began performing for Roger Clayton, the founder of Uncle Jam's Army, who had clubs all over Los Angeles and opened doors by letting 213 perform in front of real crowds. And for a fun little story, they even had homegirls back then known as the Big Posse, who acted as their female security. And these girls were definitely not to be messed with. But the music did not take 213 anywhere yet. Not long after, Snoop was arrested for selling to an undercover officer and sentenced to almost a year in jail. His cellmate told him to take rap seriously after seeing his talent, and as Warren G later recalled, He and Snoop had been in and out of county jail several times during their teens. After his release, Snoop decided to focus on rapping. In the early 90s, 213 recorded a few tracks with producer Money B, and their song Long Beach is a Motherfucker became an immediate local hit. They started selling their tapes for $5 in their neighborhood, and this is when Snoop changed his name from Snoop Rocksky to Snoop Doggy Dogg, inspired by his cousin Tate Doggy Dogg. Around this time, Big C Style, not to be confused with Lil C Style, who was another one of Snoop's homies, started becoming part of their entourage. He was an OG from Long Beach and had Snoop, Warren, Nate, Daz, and Lil Half Dead coming to his apartment. They started recording music in his garage, and he kind of began acting like a manager, driving them to producers so they could record songs, including to a guy named Enough, the producer who made Supa Dupa, the track that later caught Dre's attention. They then recorded their first demo with DJ Slice and LC in the small studio behind the VIP Records, the same place where Snoop later shot his first video. Sir Jinx had helped build that studio, and Kelvin Anderson, the owner of VIP, mailed their demo to every label he could, but nobody responded. Now let's briefly dive into the history of the DPGC. Warren G and Lil Half Dead are Snoop's childhood friends. Nate Dogg and Big C Style are his homies from Long Beach that he met during his teens. And RBX, Daz Dillinger, and Joe Cool are his cousins. And if you don't know who Joe Cool is, he's the one who drew Snoop's iconic Doggy Style album cover. When Snoop was recording his debut album in '93, he immediately thought about his cousin. He had just gotten out of jail, and Snoop asked him to design the cover, hoping the opportunity would motivate him to leave the streets behind. That cover immediately made his name known across the culture, and his passing in 2024 affected the entire hip-hop community. From what I understand, all of them were the core members of what would become the DPGC, which would later include other affiliates who came into the picture after they joined Death Row, like Superfly Badass and Trey D. At one point, they were living 5 or 6 deep in a one-bedroom apartment that they called the Dog Pound. They even kept a roach as a pet and named him the Gooch. They tried to get rid of him when they first moved in, but he always got away, so they ended up feeding him instead. He grew to the size of a dollar bill, as Snoop recalled in his interview with N.W.A. They met Kurupt after he and Snoop faced each other in a legendary rap battle in the Roxy parking lot, a showdown that ended in a draw. Kurupt's homegirl Diamond made the introduction, and they clicked immediately, stayed in touch, and Warren later recorded a few tracks with Kurupt for his demo. Snoop would later bring Kurupt into the Death Row circle once he got signed, and he ended up bonding with Snoop's little cousin Daz Dillinger, leading to the creation of their iconic duo, the Dog Pound. During this period, things were rough. 213 kept getting rejected by label executives. After one rejection, Snoop even threw all his rap notebooks into a dumpster, and Warren G climbed in and pulled them out. As Snoop often said, Warren believed in him more than he believed in himself. Warren pushed them to stay off the streets, found places to record their demos, and spent 2 years bugging his big brother to hear their material, without success. Warren also spent a lot of his time at Audio Achievements, where N.W.A. recorded their music. He was around the same age as Sir Jinx, and both were treated like the young scrubs hanging around. That is how Warren ended up doing a skit on N.W.A.'s final album in 1991. Around that time, Warren started bonding with Above the Law, especially Laylaw, Go Mac, and Cole 187, who introduced him to G-Funk. And by the way, if you don't know who Laylaw is, you need to check out the last episode. Around late 1990 or early 91, Warren introduced Snoop and Nate Dogg to Above the Law. They immediately showed interest in developing them, especially Snoop, so he started going to the studio every day. As Snoop recalled during his off-air interview with Big Boy, Above the Law was in the middle of recording their sophomore album, as well as Cocaine's debut, so he had to wait on the bench. He waited for about 4 months, playing Madden in the lobby while they were recording. This was the same moment Dre and the DOC left to build Death Row with Suge Knight. Then one Friday, Above the Law finally brought Snoop upstairs. Code 187 played a beat for him, told him it was his, and said they would record it on Monday. But Saturday came and Dre and Warren were at LA Dre's bachelor party. When the music started running out, Warren threw in a 213 tape. The moment Dre heard Snoop's voice, he locked in. He asked Warren who it was, and Warren told him it was Snoopy, the same kid he had been bugging him about for the last couple of years. Dre was looking for new artists to sign to Death Row and told Warren to call Snoop on the spot. Snoop hung up at first thinking Warren was playing. Then Dre called him himself on Sunday and asked if he could be in the studio on Monday, and Snoop accepted immediately. Now, after years of hustle, Snoop suddenly had two offers. And as he puts it, he was caught between two choices. He had been waiting almost 4 months at Ruthless Records, hanging around above the law. He knew that if he missed the Monday recording session with them, he could still show up on Tuesday, but he could probably not miss his other opportunity. Dre was hard to reach. Even with Dre being the big brother of his best friend, it had taken him years to finally get him to hear their material. Dre was already Dre back then, already seen as one of the best hip-hop producers, so Snoop chose to see what that Monday with Dre would look like. He showed up with Warren G. Dre flipped one of their songs from the demo, Gangsta's Life, using a James Brown sample, and the story was so gangsta that Dre fell in love with it. Their connection in the recording studio was instant, and there was no turning back to Above the Law. That moment marked the beginning of the most impactful hip-hop duo, a partnership that continues to this day, with the two working together for more than 30 years. Dre saw Snoop as a diamond in the rough who just needed a little polishing, which is why, not long after, he introduced him to the DOC. But before that, Dre went to see Code 187, who he was still cool with and who he knew had planned to develop him. He asked him if it was all right for him to work with Snoop, and Code 187 gave his approval. At that moment, Snoop wasn't signed to Ruthless. Code 187's plan was the same one he used for Cocaine, to cut a 3 or 4 track demo with Snoop and play it for Easy, who would have most likely signed him. Easy would let Code 187 develop his own artists. Now, I'm not going to dive into the Death Row era here, because I'm saving that for part 2. But to sum it up, the first song Dre and Snoop recorded together was Deep Cover for the soundtrack of the film released in '92. From there, they recorded Dre's debut album, The Chronic, which served to introduce Snoop to the world by heavily featuring him on 10 songs. It was released in late '92 and went on to sell more than 7 million copies worldwide. And in 1993, Snoop became the first rapper ever to debut at #1 on Billboard. His debut album, Doggy Style, became hip-hop's most anticipated album ever, selling almost 1 million copies in its first week, and is estimated to have sold 11 million copies worldwide to this day. As I've said since the beginning of the N.W.A. docuseries, the Ruthless family tree is massive and full of stories many people never heard. For the little-known story that I covered in MC Ren's episode, when Ice Cube, Dre, and Ren reunited during the Up in Smoke tour, it sparked the idea of recording an N.W.A. reunion album, with talks of adding Snoop Dogg as a member to fill the void left by Eazy-E. They even recorded Chin Check with Snoop, designed to build hype for a new N.W.A. project, originally titled Not These Again. It was planned for release in 2000, but legal complications over the rights to the name N.W.A. derailed the project, and Dre lost motivation to continue. It's crazy to think that a simple moment like LA Dre's Bachelor Party changed everything. If Snoop had gone to record with Above the Law that Monday, none of this would have happened. What would Death Row have looked like without him? A lot of young cats don't realize how essential he was, not only as an MC, but in bringing in his entourage, the D.P.G. crew, Kurupt, Nate Dogg, Daz Dillinger, and RBX. All of them shaped the Death Row sound under Dre's creative vision. And what would Snoop's career have looked like if he had signed to Ruthless Records under Above the Law? I'm really curious to read what you think what would have happened in a metaverse. Post it in the comments. I'll try to reply to all of them. And get ready for Snoop's biopic, which is already in the works under Universal and Death Row Pictures. Alright fam, that wraps up today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell as a brand new episode comes out every 10 days. In case you're just tuning in, I'm specialized in animated documentaries, digging up rare insights and untold backstories about your favorite old school rappers. And if you're a fan of N.W.A., make sure to check out my docuseries exploring the origins of the world's most dangerous group, including the stories of Crazy D, the forgotten Mexican member, and of Laylaw, their secret affiliate. For short animated stories and the latest old school hip hop news, make sure to follow us on Instagram. just like your favorite rappers already did. If you don't know, we're pretty active on here and are publishing short animated interview clips in collaboration with major hip-hop outlets in the game. For those who want to show a little support, as these documentaries take a ton of time, research, and effort to put together, YouTube thanks and memberships are now available. Big love to everyone who stuck around till now. Peace out, and see you real soon.